Kyle sat in the cockpit of his small exploration ship, staring at the blinking lights of the console. Space was quiet, too quiet, except for the soft hum of the engines. He had spent years exploring unknown systems, trading with new worlds, and studying alien civilizations, but nothing could prepare him for the message he had just received. It was short, almost impossible to believe at first. "Do you remember me? I am Princess Lyria. You once promised to stay with me. Virelia needs you." Kyle blinked, unsure if he had read it correctly. The message was encrypted, coming from a star system nearly 100 light-years away, but the signature was unmistakable. Lyria, the alien princess he had met years ago, the one who had trusted him when no one else did. He leaned back in his chair and let the memory wash over him. He remembered Virelia vividly. The first time he had set foot on that planet, it had seemed like paradise. Lush forests, towering mountains, and rivers that sparkled like liquid crystal. But behind its beauty, danger waited. Political intrigue, assassination plots, and a palace that seemed more like a fortress than a home. And Lyria, she had been so young yet so wise. She had walked with the help of a mechanical support device, her legs weak from an accident that had left her disabled. Many in her court had doubted her ability to rule, but Kale had seen something different: strength, courage, and a mind sharper than any counselor he had ever met. He remembered the day the assassins had tried to take her life. He had acted without thinking, moving faster than any Virelian soldier could. Using a mix of human ingenuity and luck, he had saved her. In the chaos, she had whispered a promise, her voice soft but steady. "If you survive this, Kale, promise me you will not forget me." At the time, it had seemed like just words, a fleeting moment in a dangerous life. But now, years later, here she was, reaching across the void of space to remind him. Kyle stood and walked to the small window of his ship, watching the stars stretch into streaks as he plotted a course for Virelia. His crew, small but loyal, had gathered behind him. "Kale," said Jara, his second-in-command, a tall human with sharp eyes. "You can't be serious. That system is unstable. Virelia hasn't been safe for years. Why risk it?" Kale turned to her, his expression calm but determined. "She reached out to me. She's asking for help. I can't ignore that." Yara shook her head. "Humans don't usually get involved in alien politics. You know that. You could be walking into a trap." Kyle smiled faintly. "Maybe, but humans have a way of turning traps into opportunities. I learned that a long time ago." He returned to the console and began entering coordinates. The engines roared to life as the ship left hyperspace lanes, heading for the unknown. Outside, the stars stretched and blurred as faster-than-light travel carried him closer to Virelia. Hours passed. Kale spent them reviewing everything he remembered about the planet, the royal palace, and Lyria herself. She had grown stronger in her mind, he was sure of it. But how had she survived these years with all the political pressures and dangers? Kale's curiosity mingled with concern. He had faced many threats in his life, but nothing had tested him like the thought of arriving and finding her in danger again. Finally, the ship slowed as Virelia's system appeared on the sensors. The planet was beautiful, just as he remembered. Deep green forests covered most of the land, while jagged mountains rose like guardians around the central continent. Rivers glimmered under the light of a pale sun, and clouds swirled in patterns that seemed almost artistic from orbit. "Prepare for landing," Kale said quietly. His crew moved with practiced precision, readying the ship for descent. Kyle felt his heart beat faster. The planet looked calm, almost peaceful. Yet he knew better. Virelia had always been more dangerous than it appeared. As the ship descended, through the atmosphere, Kale noticed the first signs of unusual activity. Patrol ships were moving in patterns that suggested more than routine security. Something had changed. The palace, perched on a high plateau, was still impressive, but surrounded by what seemed like defensive barriers. The old council had always feared threats, but now Kale could feel tension in the air, even from orbit. The landing was smooth. Guards in armored suits immediately surrounded the ship, their weapons raised but cautious. Kale stepped out, his hands open to show no hostility. The leader, a tall alien with pale blue skin and sharp eyes, stepped forward. "You are Kale?" the guard asked, his voice formal but slightly curious. "I am," Kale replied. "I come on a message from Princess Lyria. She sent for me." The guard's expression softened slightly. "She has been expecting you." Kyle followed the guards through the winding roads of the palace grounds. Every step reminded him of the last time he had been here, the fear, the danger, and the trust Lyria had placed in him. Now she awaited him, older but no less remarkable. The doors of the palace opened, and there she was, Princess Lyria. Her hair had grown longer, a silver streak running through it, and her eyes held the same sharp intelligence he remembered. Despite her mechanical support, she moved with dignity, her posture proud, her presence commanding. "Kyle," she said, her voice soft but carrying an unmistakable authority. "You came." "I promised I would," Kale said, stepping closer. "You sent for me. I couldn't ignore that." Lyria smiled faintly, and Kale noticed the weariness in her eyes. Years of political struggles and personal challenges had marked her, but her spirit remained unbroken. "I need your help," she said, her tone serious. "Virelia is changing, and not everyone wants that. There are forces here who see me as weak because of my disability. They want to control the planet, to keep things the way they were. I cannot fight them alone." Kyle nodded. "You don't have to." He looked around at the palace, at the guards, and the people moving with careful purpose. "Humans have a way of finding solutions that no one expects. We'll figure this out together." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I remember why I trusted you. You think differently. You see possibilities where others see obstacles." Kyle smiled. "That's what humans do. We survive by adapting, by looking for opportunities, and by helping those who need it most." Lyria leaned back slightly in her support device, her gaze thoughtful. "The Council does not understand that. They think strength is physical, not mental. They do not see the value of intelligence, strategy, or loyalty. But I do, and I see it in you." Kyle felt a warmth spread through him. She had not only remembered him, she had believed in him all this time. He realized that the promise she had reminded him of was not just a memory. It was a mission, a call to action. Before they could speak further, a sudden alert flashed across the palace sensors. The guard beside Kale looked tense. "Sir," he said, "there is unusual movement near the eastern perimeter. It could be an infiltration attempt." Kyle's instincts kicked in immediately. "Show me." He followed the guard to the monitoring room, where holographic screens displayed the palace grounds. Shadowy figures moved among the trees, avoiding patrols, heading toward the central building. Kale studied the patterns carefully. These were not ordinary thieves or smugglers. They were coordinated, precise, and dangerous. "They're targeting the palace," Kale said quietly. "And they know exactly where to go." Lyria's eyes narrowed. "They've learned, adapted. My enemies have grown bold." Kale nodded. "Then we'll have to be bolder." He turned to the guards. "Prepare defenses, but listen carefully. We're going to use their expectations against them. Humans have a few tricks you might not have seen before." The guards exchanged uncertain glances, but Lyria's calm authority reassured them. As the first signs of the infiltration appeared on the sensors, Kyle felt a familiar thrill. Danger was coming, yes, but so was the chance to protect someone he deeply respected, someone who had trusted him against all odds. And for the first time in years, Kale felt that old, unshakable certainty. Humans could survive anything, adapt to any challenge, and make a difference even in alien worlds. Lyria looked at him, her gaze steady. "Kyle, I am glad you came. I told you I wouldn't forget you," he said, "and I never will." Outside the palace, the shadows moved closer. Inside, a human and an alien princess prepared to face whatever threat was coming next. Together, they were ready to prove that courage, intelligence, and loyalty could overcome even the most dangerous of enemies. Kale followed Princess Lyria through the grand corridors of the palace. The walls shimmered with alien metals and soft lights that seemed to respond to their presence. Lyria moved carefully, leaning on her support device, yet she carried herself with confidence. Every step she took reminded Kale of her resilience. She was not weak. Far from it. "The palace has changed since you were last here," Lyria said, her voice calm but serious. "The council tries to keep me limited, to make others believe I cannot lead, but I refuse to let them." Kyle nodded, glancing around. He could feel the tension in the air. Guards moved with precision, their eyes constantly scanning the corridors. Courtiers whispered in corners, some curious, some fearful. It was clear that Lyria's leadership was not fully accepted, and her enemies watched her closely. "They fear change," Kale said. "They are not used to someone challenging the old ways, but humans have faced that many times. We find ways to survive and to win." Lyria smiled faintly. "Your confidence is reassuring. Humans seem to believe that anything is possible." Kale returned her smile, but his mind was already working. The palace might appear calm, but the sensors had shown movement near the eastern perimeter. Infiltrators, spies, or worse were planning something. He needed to understand the layout, the guards' positions, and the palace's weaknesses. "Show me the control room," Kale said. They entered a large chamber filled with glowing panels and floating holograms. Lyria gestured to one of the central displays. "This is the heart of palace security," she said. "Every entrance, every passage, every patrol, tracked and controlled from here, but even this cannot prevent everything. My enemies adapt faster than we anticipate." Kyle studied the holograms. He noticed patterns in the guard movements, gaps in coverage, and areas where an intruder could approach unnoticed. His human instincts began to form a plan. "You have a strong defense," he said, "but I see a few places where we can improve. Humans often use misdirection and quick response to turn disadvantages into advantages. I can help you do that." Lyria's eyes sparkled. "I want to learn. Show me." Kyle spent the next hour explaining simple strategies, teaching the guards and Lyria how to use their technology differently. They practiced simulated alerts, moved pieces on holographic maps, and Kale demonstrated how to anticipate enemy movement. "You see, it's not just about strength," Kale explained. "It's about thinking ahead, using what you have, and surprising the opponent. Intelligence can win battles that brute force cannot." Lyria nodded, clearly impressed. "I understand. We have relied too much on tradition and fear. Perhaps it is time to trust in new ways." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft alarm. One of the sensors had detected unusual activity near the palace gardens. Kyle immediately walked to the window overlooking the area. He could see figures moving in the shadows, avoiding patrols, trying to approach the palace unnoticed. "They are testing us," Kyle said. "Small groups first, to see how we react. They want to find our weaknesses. Before striking fully," Lyria's face hardened, "then we will give them no weaknesses to find." Kale smiled at her determination. "Exactly. Humans don't just wait. We act, we adapt, and we protect those who matter." Over the next few hours, Kale worked with the guards, showing them human techniques of defense and counterattack. He introduced traps that could slow intruders, planned escape routes, and taught the guards how to coordinate silently. Lyria absorbed every lesson, her mind sharp and quick. Despite her disability, she was proving herself as a leader capable of strategy and innovation. "You are amazing," Kyle said quietly, glancing at her. "Your mind is stronger than anyone I've met. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Lyria looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and resolve in her eyes. "I will not. And now, with you here, I feel stronger. I feel like we can face anything." Kyle nodded. "We will. But remember, this is just the beginning. They will not stop at testing. They will try to strike fully if they think they can." Later that evening, Kale and Lyria walked through the palace gardens. The sky was painted with the colors of Virelia's twin moons, casting a soft glow over the landscape. Flowers with bioluminescent petals illuminated the paths, creating a surreal, peaceful atmosphere. "This place is beautiful," Kyle said. "It is hard to believe there are enemies plotting in such a peaceful land." Lyria laughed softly. "Beauty often hides danger. That is the lesson of my life. But even in the darkness, there is hope. That is why I wanted you here. You remind me of hope, Kale." Kale felt a warmth in his chest. "You've always had hope, Lyria. I just help you see it when others try to take it away." Their quiet moment was broken by another alert. A small team of intruders had been spotted near the lower gates. They were moving quickly, trying to find a way inside. Kale's instincts kicked in immediately. "They are testing our defenses again," he said. "We need to intercept them before they get close." Lyria nodded, her eyes sharp. "Then let's move." Kale led a group of guards to the gardens. Using the strategies he had taught them, they quickly set up ambush points, coordinated silently, and waited for the intruders. When the enemy emerged from the shadows, they were met with unexpected resistance. The guards moved like a single unit, anticipating every step. Kyle directed them from the back, giving quick orders that turned the ambush into a decisive defense. The intruders were forced to retreat, clearly surprised by the efficiency of the palace's response. Kale smiled. "See? Intelligence and preparation beat force every time." Lyria approached him, her eyes bright. "I see it now. You are right. We can defend ourselves without relying solely on strength. We can be smart, adaptable, and united." Kale nodded. "And that is what humans bring to the table. We survive by thinking, not just fighting. By helping each other, not by leaving anyone behind." As the intruders disappeared into the night, Kyle and Lyria stood together in the garden, the cool night air brushing against them. The palace behind them was safe for now, but Kale knew this was only the beginning. "You've changed my perspective," Lyria said softly. "I have relied too much on tradition, on fear of the unknown. But you show me that change can be a strength." Kale smiled. "And you remind me that strength is not just physical. It's courage, intelligence, and heart. You have all of that, Lyria. And that is why I came." For the first time since arriving, Kale allowed himself to relax. He trusted Lyria's judgment, and he knew that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The palace, the council, the enemies lurking in the shadows, they would all have to adapt to the unexpected. Over the next few days, Kyle worked closely with Lyria and her team. They reviewed security protocols, trained the guards in new strategies, and studied the movements of potential enemies. Kyle admired Lyria's determination. Despite the political pressure, despite the danger, she remained focused on her people and her goals. "You inspire me," Kale said one evening as they looked over the holographic map of the palace. "Your mind, your will, it is incredible. Humans can learn a lot from your example." Lyria laughed softly. "And humans inspire me. Your courage, your ingenuity, your loyalty. I have not seen anything like it in Virelia before." Kyle nodded. "That is what humans do. We adapt, we fight, and we protect. And we never forget those who matter to us." As night fell over Virelia, Kyle felt a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. This was not just a mission. This was personal. Lyria had trusted him, called for him, and reminded him of a promise he had made long ago. And he would not let her or her people down. In the quiet of the palace, Kyle and Lyria prepared for the challenges ahead. Intruders, political opponents, and threats from unknown corners of the galaxy could come at any moment. But together, they were stronger, smarter, ready. And somewhere deep in the shadows, Kyle sensed that the enemies who tested the palace tonight were only the beginning. A larger threat was waiting, one that would challenge both his human ingenuity and Lyria's leadership. But he was ready. Together they could face anything, because humans did not give up. They did not retreat. They adapted. And when they stood, alongside those they cared for, there was no obstacle too great, No enemy too powerful and no darkness too deep. Kyle looked at Lyria, her eyes shining with determination. "We face this together," he said. Lyria nodded. Together. The night had passed quietly in the palace, but Kyle knew it was only a brief calm. As the first light of Virelia's sun crept over the mountains, he stood at the observation deck overlooking the eastern plains. Shadows moved far below, almost invisible, but his instincts told him they were not ordinary travelers. "They're back," Kale said quietly to Lyria, who had joined him, leaning lightly on her mechanical support. Her eyes, though tired, were sharp and alert. Lyria followed his gaze. "They are bold. They strike when the palace is least prepared. But they will not succeed. I have learned from your guidance." Kyle nodded. "Good. But learning is only the first step. Action is next. We need a plan to stop them before they reach the palace." They returned to the command room, where guards and palace strategists were already gathered. Kale began analyzing the recent movements of the intruders. Using human tactics combined with Virelia's advanced sensors, he created a map predicting the likely paths of the attackers. "Their goal is to test our defenses, but the next wave will be larger," Kale explained. "They will not just sneak in. They will strike hard expecting us to be slow, but we won't be. We will anticipate them, we will counter them, and we will protect this palace." Lyria listened carefully, then addressed the guards. "Prepare for battle. Follow Kale's instructions. Every move matters. We do not just fight for ourselves, we fight for Virelia, for its people, and for the future." Kyle smiled faintly. "That's right. Humans believe in what they protect, and that gives them strength. Remember that." By mid-morning, the palace was a hive of preparation. Guards moved with purpose, assisted by Kale's tactical instructions. He introduced simple but effective human strategies, using traps, obstacles, and controlled ambush points. Lyria coordinated communications, ensuring that every unit knew their role. Even with her disability, she worked faster than most of the counselors could have imagined. "They are testing our limits," Kale said to her quietly. "But humans thrive under pressure. That's when we are at our best." Lyria nodded. "Then let us show them what strength really is." As the first wave of attackers approached, Kyle and Lyria watched from the upper terraces. The intruders moved with precision, trying to avoid patrols, but Kyle's predictions were accurate. Hidden sensors and obstacles slowed them down, forcing them into narrow paths where the guards could engage effectively. "Now," Kyle whispered. A signal was sent and the traps activated. Net barriers rose and energy fields blocked their progress. The attackers hesitated, caught off guard by the unexpected defenses. The guards moved quickly, striking with precision. Kyle observed the battle, giving instructions that allowed his small team to outmaneuver a larger force. Every move was calculated, every step a demonstration of human ingenuity. Lyria directed reinforcements where needed, her mind sharp despite her physical limitations. She analyzed the intruders' movements, anticipating their next steps. Together, Kale and Lyria became a coordinated force that neither the attackers nor the council's enemies had expected. One of the intruders attempted to flank the palace from the southern garden. Kale noticed immediately. "Intercept them before they reach the wall," he ordered. A small group of guards moved swiftly, guided by Kale's strategy, and trapped the intruders in a corner. "You see," Kale said to Lyria as they watched the success of the plan, "it's not just weapons or numbers. It's thinking ahead, using what you have and adapting to the situation. That is how humans survive." Lyria smiled. "I understand now. Strength is more than force. It is intelligence, courage, and teamwork." The battle continued throughout the day. The attackers were relentless, testing every defense, probing every weakness. But Kale's tactics and Lyria's leadership kept them contained. The palace's advanced technology, combined with human ingenuity, turned the tide repeatedly. Kale noticed one group attempting to breach the central gate using energy disruptors. He quickly devised a counter. "Redirect the force fields," he instructed. "Create a zone they cannot cross, lead them into the trap." The guards followed, and the intruders were forced into a narrow corridor lined with defensive drones. The drones activated, incapacitating the attackers without lethal force. Kale smiled. See? Smart thinking, careful planning, and calm execution. That is human strategy. Lyria watched, amazed. You teach not only action, but wisdom. I see. Now why I trusted you. Your mind is as sharp as your courage. As the sun set, the attackers had been repelled. But Kale knew this was not the end. They were testing the palace defenses, looking for weaknesses to exploit in a future attack. Lyria's enemies were patient, ruthless, and well-equipped. But Kyle also knew one truth. Humans could always find a way. Kyle, Lyria said quietly, I have never felt such confidence in my safety before, not even with the best guards in Veralia. Your presence changes everything. Kyle placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. It's not just me, it's you too. You lead, you adapt, you inspire. Humans just help you see the possibilities. Night fell, and the palace remained on high alert. Kyle and Lyria reviewed the day's events, noting weaknesses to improve and strategies to strengthen. Every lesson, every observation was a step toward ensuring the palace could withstand the next attack. You are remarkable, Kale said softly. Your people underestimate you because of appearances. They do not see the strength of your mind, your courage, and your leadership. Lyria smiled faintly. And now, with your guidance, they will have no choice but to see it. I will not be limited by their fear. I will lead, and I will protect Veralia, even if it means facing death itself. Kale's eyes narrowed slightly. Then they will learn that humans and their allies do not back down. We adapt, we protect, and we fight, and we always keep our promises. The next day, a message arrived from the enemy faction, a clear warning. They were aware of Kale's strategies and Lyria's leadership. They would escalate their attacks, striking harder, faster, and more cleverly. Kale studied the message, noting the arrogance and underestimation of human ingenuity. They think they can outsmart us, Kyle said to Lyria, but they forget one thing. Humans are unpredictable. We use what they do not expect. That will be our advantage. Lyria nodded. Then we must prepare. My people must see that intelligence, courage, and strategy are stronger than fear. Kyle spent the following hours training the guards in advanced tactics. He taught them how to anticipate enemy behavior, how to use the palace's environment to their advantage, and how to work together as a single unit. Lyria observed and contributed, her strategic mind sharpening every plan. By the time the second wave of attackers arrived, Kyle and Lyria were ready. The palace defenses were stronger, more coordinated, and smarter than before. The intruders met organized resistance at every turn. Every move they made was anticipated, every attempt to breach the palace countered by a combination of human strategy and Verilian technology. The battle was intense, but Kale's leadership and Lyria's intelligence turned what could have been a disaster into a victory. The attackers were forced to retreat, leaving behind their equipment and energy disruptors, their confidence shaken. Kyle looked at Lyria, her face illuminated by the glow of the palace lights. This is just the beginning, he said. They will come again, but now they know something important. They cannot underestimate us, and humans never back down. Lyria's eyes shone with determination. I understand. With you by my side, Kyle, Veralia will survive. I will survive. And together we will face whatever comes next. Kale nodded. That is the human way. We protect those who matter. We adapt to the impossible. And we never give up. As night fell over the palace, Kale stood at the terrace once more, looking out over the distant plains where the enemy had retreated. He knew the coming days would bring greater challenges, but he also knew this. With Lyria's leadership and human ingenuity, combined, nothing could break them. The story of courage, intelligence, and loyalty had only just begun. The morning light cast long shadows across the palace grounds. Kyle stood on the terrace, his eyes scanning the horizon. The distant plains were alive with movement. This time, it was not a small group testing the defenses. It was an entire army, organized, armed, and ready to attack. "They're coming," Kale said, his voice calm but firm. He turned to Lyria, who stood beside him, steady and composed despite her mechanical support. "This is bigger than before. We need every advantage." "We have." Lyria nodded, her eyes sharp. "We will not run, we will not hide. Virelia is ours to protect." Kale smiled faintly. "That's the human way. Stand, fight, and protect those who matter." Inside the command room, Kale coordinated with the palace guards and strategists. He analyzed the enemy army's formation and movement patterns. Unlike the smaller groups they had faced before, this force was sophisticated, with armored units, advanced energy weapons, and fast assault vehicles. The enemy expected to overwhelm them quickly, but Kale had a plan. "Listen carefully," Kale said. "They rely on strength and speed, but they underestimate intelligence and adaptation. We will use the palace environment to our advantage. Set traps, create choke points, and control their movement. Every attack they make, we will be ready," Lyria added. "My people will fight with honor, but we will also fight smart. Every Virelian here will know their role. Every ally will matter." The first wave of attackers reached the palace outskirts by mid-morning. Kale had prepared hidden energy barriers, force fields, and defensive drones, all coordinated through Lyria's command. The moment the enemy crossed into the designated zone, they were funneled into narrow corridors where traps and ambushes awaited. Kyle watched as his strategy unfolded. Guards moved like a single unit, striking with precision. Drones disabled. The armored vehicles and energy nets ensnared enemy soldiers. Even with superior numbers, the attackers were slowed, confused, and frustrated. "They are smart," Kale said. "But humans and their allies are smarter." Lyria's eyes followed the battle, calculating every move. "This is working, but we cannot rely on it for long. They will adapt." Kale nodded. "Exactly, which is why we must stay ahead of them. Predict their moves, control their options, and use our advantages fully." The battle intensified. 1. Enemy squad tried to flank the palace from the southern gardens. Kale noticed immediately. "Intercept them now, use the corridors, lead them where we can control them." The guards followed his instructions flawlessly, cutting off the flank and forcing the intruders into a controlled trap. Kale felt a surge of satisfaction. The human mind combined with Virelian technology was making the impossible possible. But the attackers were relentless. A new wave of assault vehicles, faster and stronger than before, approached the main gate. Kale studied them carefully. Their energy disruptors could tear through the palace shields if not countered quickly. "Deploy the adaptive shields," Kale ordered. "Redirect energy pulses to weaken their weapons. Lead them into the eastern choke zone." The guards moved swiftly. Energy barriers shifted in real time, forcing the attackers into narrow paths where defensive drones and hidden turrets were waiting. Vehicles were disabled before they could reach the walls, and the soldiers were trapped and captured. Lyria watched, her admiration for Kale growing. "Your tactics, humans, are remarkable. You turn numbers and strength into weakness. You make the impossible possible." Kyle glanced at her. "And you, Lyria, lead with intelligence and courage. That is why this works. Humans alone can fight, but humans and allies together can win anything." The enemy army regrouped for a final assault, more aggressive and desperate than before. They focused on the central gate, hoping to break through and reach the palace. Kale studied their formation and made a quick decision. "Divide their forces," he instructed. "Use speed and obstacles to split them. Then we strike at the flanks while they are distracted." The guards executed his plan perfectly. Energy barriers shifted, trap corridors activated, and hidden drones struck from above. The enemy was caught off guard. Their forces split, confusion spread, and their advance slowed. Lyria directed reinforcements where needed, her mind sharp despite the chaos. Even with her disability, she managed multiple fronts at once, coordinating attacks and ensuring no gap was left unguarded. Kale moved among the guards, giving instructions, adjusting strategies and ensuring every position was covered. His human adaptability and quick thinking made the difference. Even when the enemy tried to improvise, Kale anticipated their moves, countering them before they could act. Hours passed. The battle raged on, but gradually the attackers began to falter. Their energy supplies ran low, their vehicles were disabled, and their soldiers were exhausted. Kyle had predicted this. The human ability to plan ahead, combined with Lyria's leadership, had turned the tide. At last, the enemy forces began to retreat. Kale watched as they withdrew across the plains, leaving behind equipment, weapons, and broken morale. Victory was theirs, for now. Kale turned to Lyria, who was watching from the terrace. They underestimated us. They thought strength alone would win. But humans and their allies think differently. We adapt, we plan, and we never give up. Lyria nodded, her eyes shining. Today we proved that intelligence and courage matter more than sheer force. My people will see that and my enemies will fear it. Kyle smiled. Humans have always survived by doing what others do not expect. That is why we can face anything. And that is why you, Lyria, are stronger than anyone believes. The palace guards cheered quietly as the battle ended. They had fought bravely, inspired by Lyria's leadership and Kale's strategies. The palace was safe, and the attackers had been forced to retreat, humiliated and defeated. Lyria approached Kyle, leaning lightly on her support device. I could not have done this without you. You are not just a human ally, Kyle. You are a partner, a teacher, and a friend. You remind me that strength comes in many forms. Kyle placed a hand gently on her shoulder. And you remind me that courage and intelligence are the true power in any battle. Humans alone cannot win everything, but humans working with those who inspire them, we are unstoppable. The sun set over the palace, casting long shadows across the grounds. Kyle and Lyria stood side by side, watching the horizon where the enemy had disappeared. They knew this was only one victory. The political forces against Lyria would not rest, and new challenges would surely come. But for now, they had proven something important. Human ingenuity, combined with courage and collaboration, could overcome overwhelming odds. They had defended the palace, protected the people, and inspired hope. Kale felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was more than a mission or a promise. It was a reminder of why humans mattered in the galaxy. Adaptable, clever, and loyal, humans could change the outcome of battles, inspire allies, and protect those who needed them most. Lyria turned to him, her expression softening. Kyle, stay with me. Viralia needs you, and I need your guidance, your courage, and your mind. Kyle met her gaze. I promised I would, and I will. Not just today, but every day. Humans keep their promises. Together, they watched the last light fade from the sky. The palace was safe. The people were inspired, and a bond stronger than any force in the galaxy had been proven. Kyle knew that the coming days would bring more challenges, but he also knew that with Lyria's intelligence and human ingenuity, combined, there was no threat they could not face. They had survived today, and tomorrow they would continue to stand together, ready for anything. The sun rose over Viralia with a soft golden glow. The palace, still standing strong after the recent battle, looked more majestic than ever. Kyle walked along the upper terrace, observing the courtyard below. Guards patrolled with a sense of pride and confidence. For the first time in weeks, there was a calm in the air, though Kale knew it was temporary. Lyria approached, moving steadily on her support device. Her expression was calm, but thoughtful. The enemies have retreated, but I know they will return, she said quietly. I must ensure that my people are prepared, not just to defend the palace, but to lead Viralia into a better future. Kale nodded. And you will. Today you showed them what leadership really means. You proved that intelligence, courage, and planning are stronger than fear. Humans fight battles like that every day. We adapt, we think, and we never give up. Lyria smiled faintly. I can see now why you are different, Kyle. You think not just of the moment but of the future. That is what I need by my side. Together they entered the palace. The hallways were filled with palace staff, advisors, and citizens who had gathered to hear the news. Kyle and Lyria walked through the crowds, exchanging nods and words of encouragement. The people of Virelia had seen the courage of their princess and the effectiveness of the human by her side. Hope was growing in their hearts. In the main council chamber, Lyria stood before the remaining council members. Kale stayed, beside her, quietly observing. Many of the council had opposed her reforms, citing her disability as a reason she could not lead. But now they could no longer ignore her strength, intelligence, and vision. I thank Kale for his guidance, Lyria began, her voice strong and steady. Together we defended Virelia from a threat that many thought impossible to resist. Today proves that leadership is not about appearances. Leadership is about courage, intelligence, and dedication to your people. The council members listened, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Kale could see that their fear and pride were giving way to respect. Your Highness, one counselor said cautiously, your actions, they have inspired the people. Perhaps we underestimated your capabilities. Lyria nodded. Perhaps you did. But now is the time to move forward. Virelia cannot survive if we cling to the past. We must embrace change, intelligence, and innovation. We must unite as one people, guided by wisdom and courage. Kyle stepped forward. And humans have learned that when you trust and protect those who matter, you create strength that is unmatched. We see what Lyria has shown us today. A mind sharper than any weapon, a heart stronger than any army. That is the power of leadership. The council fell silent. Slowly, one by one, they nodded, acknowledging the truth in Kale's words. Lyria's reforms would now begin, guided by her vision and supported by her people. Later, Kale walked with Lyria through the palace gardens. The flowers glowed softly in the twilight, and the twin moons reflected on the river below. For the first time since arriving, Kale felt a deep sense of peace. The palace had survived, the people were inspired, and Lyria had proven herself as a leader. You have changed so much, Lyria, Kale said quietly. Not just the palace, not just the people, but the world around you. Your courage inspires everyone who sees it. Lyria looked at him, her eyes softening. And you, Kale? You reminded me of what I could be. You taught me that intelligence, strategy, and courage matter more than appearances. You gave me hope when I needed it most. Kale smiled faintly. That is what humans do. We fight, we adapt, and we protect those we care about. And we never forget our promises. Lyria's expression changed, a mixture of gratitude and longing. And what about your promise to me, Kale? Years ago you said you would stay, will you? Kale paused, meeting her gaze. I promised, and I will. Not just today, not just for this battle, but for as long as you need me. A soft breeze blew through the gardens as Lyria reached out, lightly touching his hand. Then stay, she whispered. Stay with me, with Virelia, and with the people who believe in us. Kyle nodded. I will. Humans do not abandon those they care about. And you matter to me more than you realize. Days passed. The palace became a place of rebuilding and reform. Lyria worked tirelessly, guiding her people with wisdom and courage. Kyle assisted her, offering human insight and strategies that helped improve communication, defense, and education. Together, they inspired loyalty, trust, and hope throughout Virelia. The people began to see that strength was not only physical, but also mental and emotional. Leaders could be disabled and still lead brilliantly. Intelligence, courage, and vision were just as important as strength and weapons. Kale's presence reinforced this lesson. One evening, as they stood on the terrace watching the sun set over the mountains, Lyria spoke quietly. Kale, do you think the enemies will return? Kale considered for a moment. Probably, but it does not matter. We have prepared, we have inspired, and we have proven that we can survive anything. Humans have faced impossible odds before, and so have you. Together, we are unstoppable. Lyria smiled, feeling a sense of peace she had not known in years. Then I am ready, and I am glad you are here. Kyle reached out, taking her hand gently. And I am glad you trusted me enough to call for help. That trust, that bond, is stronger than any army. The palace was alive with celebration and relief. Guards, citizens, and advisors came together, inspired by the courage of their princess and the human who had stood beside her. Stories of the battles spread throughout Virelia. Tales of intelligence overcoming strength, courage inspiring loyalty, and humans proving themselves in unexpected ways. Kyle and Lyria spent time walking through the city, visiting the people and witnessing the changes that were taking place. Schools were opened, trade routes improved, and defense systems updated with strategies Kyle had taught. Lyria's reforms began to take shape, guided by her vision and strengthened by human insight. One evening, after a long day, they returned to the palace. Lyria looked at Kale, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. You have done more than help me defend the palace. You have helped me show my people what true leadership is. You have changed Virelia forever. Kale shook his head gently. I only helped. You did the hard work. Humans can teach, guide, and inspire, but it is your courage and wisdom that made this possible. They stood together in silence for a moment, the cool breeze carrying the scent of Virelian flowers. Kyle felt a deep connection, not just to Lyria, but to the planet and its people. Humans could make a difference even in alien worlds by using intelligence, courage, and loyalty. Finally, Lyria spoke softly. Kyle, now that the palace is safe and the people are inspired, will you stay? Truly stay, not just as a guide, but as someone who is here for me? Kale took her hand firmly. I promised once and I promise again. I will stay. Humans keep their word. I will protect you, support you, and be here as long as you need me. Tears of relief and gratitude filled Lyria's eyes. Then I am glad. You remind me that hope and courage are stronger than fear. Kyle smiled. And you remind me that true strength is not measured by the body, but by the mind, the heart, and the will to act. That is what humans and leaders share alike. As night fell over Virelia, the palace glowed softly under the twin moons. Kyle and Lyria stood together, watching the horizon. The battles were over, for now. But the bond they had formed, the trust they had built, and the courage they had shown would last far longer. Kyle knew that the future would hold challenges, but he also knew one truth. With intelligence, courage, and loyalty, humans could inspire change, protect the innocent, and stand alongside anyone who needed them. And Lyria knew that with Kyle by her side, she could lead Virelia into a new era, one of hope, unity, and strength. Together, they had proven that humans and aliens, working together, could overcome any obstacle, face any danger, and create a legacy that would be remembered for generations. The promise was fulfilled. The palace was safe. And a human had stayed, keeping his word to a disabled alien princess who had once trusted him. They turned from the terrace, walking side by side into the palace, ready to face whatever the future held. Together,